I think all and none all at the same time can be, basically, as today. I think producer has turned into such a wide term word, was when we're talking about a music producer or a hip-hop producer, what that can accomplish and has done really for a long time. And I think if you go back, the idea of what a producer is has constantly changed from what a record producer was in the 70s to the 80s to the 90s. There's obviously certain things that stay consistent, but I think hip-hop changed a lot of the understanding of what a producer is, because a lot of people who we say are hip-hop producers, at one point we were just beat makers or just had an idea of the music you want to make, and from trial and error and being in studios and such, you're now a producer, or you've made a record, so you're the producer of that record. And I think, a lot of people maybe not, I think back in the day didn't necessarily think about being a producer in that sense. They just was the DJ and then started making beats, and you had a rap, and it was more of a natural progression. And you go into a studio and the engineer is really kind of finessing out, mellowing out, leveling out, doing that kind of heavy lifting for you in a professional studio. And you've crafted the beat, and then through trial and error from when you're in. That's, for me, that's definitely how I started from. I didn't even have a beat machine as such. I had an Atari ST and a program on the Atari ST, and I would make this outline of the idea of the beat, and I would take that into the studio and tell the engineer in the studio how to recreate that on the 950 and Cubase that he had. And then I learned that from going and watching him and picking up things. Bought my own, I had an Atari ST, got Cubase for it, got a 900, and started then programming the stuff myself at home. So, and I'm still just making beats. So it's like you're trying to do your little mixes, but they're very rough, It's only till you go into a studio and have an engineer, per se, who knows what they're doing, kind of evening and putting your stuff in the right ballpark, So it's a whole learning curve, I think, for a producer to be like, really say they're a full music producer. So what is a producer? Because a producer can not even make the beat, and a lot of, like a kind of Puff Daddy situation where you're just, you know the guy who makes the beat, you know what kind of beat you're looking for, you know the artist, and you put it together, and then you're in the studio and you do this, you do that, and you're kind of orchestrating the whole thing. So yeah, that's the music producer. You're orchestrating the whole. So it can be amalgamation or one of the two. A lot of people who we say are music producers, they're more beat makers, and then they've relied on the engineer to finish the end product. And that's then you get the variation. Some records sound great, some records don't, So for me, it's been a constant journey of, okay, you have to master your craft as a beat maker, and you also need to be a proficient sound engineer, which are completely two different trades. So to understand now mixing sound, recording sound, and all of the above, mastering sound, those are all different fields of expertise and require different heads for each task. And a different ear for each task. So trying to be a jack of all trades, as some people say, so that for me is where I've taken a lot of time into trying to perfect each craft, and then you take time out to do certain things. And through a long time, I've been doing this I would say like mixing sound or learning to mix sound since the late 90s. And before I was always dabbling in it, but you're not really thinking professionally. But it's after going into professional environments, spending a lot of money on engineers and studio time, that you pick up certain things and you have certain ideas, and then, I'm in a state now where it's like, okay, I bought the gear, I've got the stuff at home in my own studio, and this was back in the 2000s, then it's like, right, okay, I'm just gonna do this by myself now. And with trial and error, you get better over time at, mixing, recording, and understanding those concepts. So I think as a producer, it can be very dynamic and not equal in terms of when you say hip hop producer or music producer across the board, because different producers are better or multiple at different tasks. So when you do beat tapes, you're saying you kind of create an identity for yourself. And yeah, I guess that is true. And also beat tapes, if you basically do them properly, it can be a great sort of representation of growth and periods of time. There was a specific time period where, like around 96, 97, which was cool for me around then doing stuff like that, because that was sort of when I was living in Camberwell, and a producer called Lasala El Dolo, he would make his tape come round, and when I lived in a house that was about 5 other friends we lived with, he would come round with his beat tape. He had the SP12. I didn't even have an SP yet, and that always kept me on my toes, because he would bring his tape round, and I'd make my little recording, and I'd bring it down, and it was always that, seeing the heads, who's bumping their head and whatever off the beat tape. That was always a good memory of tapes, and I do think, when you're making playlists like that, you're gonna basically kind of get to hear where you're at and the level you're at with what you're doing. A lot of the times for me, I don't really make full tapes, because it's always a thing where you're not quite feel like you're finished, so you don't actually record it off. And the amount of that can be a deadly mistake if you're not on top of going back, because sometimes you'll just forget or not bother to go back. And if it never, if you don't hear it, you might not get inspired until you hear it again. You understand? And then even sometimes I got a lot of more old DATs that are like that, where it's just old beats, and then it's all like, oh shit, I've completely forgot about that, and it might have been half finished or half baked, but it had a dope whatever to it, and sometimes that will make you go back to the song, rework it, Yeah, definitely, and maybe it's even more nefarious than that, because when you think of the prison industrial complex, you got to really think, that's a crazy machine within itself. They were literally trying to make an industry off of black men in prison. And how can we now literally from a young age convert a young black mind to want to go out there and do crime, to basically end up in this system, which basically will take you for most of your adult life, and maybe will take you through your whole life. So I think it's more worrying than just record sales when you think it's as big as that, because the music is one thing, and I think really it's not just music, it's culture. It's how do you control culture and then control populations, social minds, social engineering. So, and that's obvious. You just have to look at the movies and, you know, advertising and the clothes and everything that is pushed towards certain people or not pushed towards certain people, right?
Yeah.
And I think the easy way to get it is always, oh, it's just about making money, but it's more than just it's what is more important than just having money to people who obviously worship money is power.
Power, yeah.
Power is more important than money, because with power, money is just going to come. So you have to have ultimate control. And that's really what we're in now, is where they're doing the super divide and conquer. They're using propaganda to the maximum. And that all that is basically, let's control, lock people down. Because once people aren't thinking for themselves and lost in propaganda, you know, it's an all win for them, because they're controlling whoever controls the narrative controls the end game. Just a smaller part of the same machine, bro. Because at the end of the day, you got to make that dollar, right? If you ain't making cash in your hand, you're fucked out here. There's a no win for you, yeah? You're dead in the water. So there ain't no real underground artist that's just sitting there trying to not make money and just make music, right? You'll be very hard done by to find that as a reality for any music artist out, you know, whether hip hop or whatever, because the reality is you got to be able to make your shit make sense. So unless you're just doing it, unless you got a nice cushy job or your family's rich already, you know what I'm saying, or you just got it like that and you just do it on the side. And there are guys like that, and they usually win because they got the backup to come. And a lot of guys I can think of, I'm not going to say names, are like that, or they've got someone on their team or backup that is like that. They've got money from another source and they put it into the music, and you know, and you can come out on top or make your company look great off of doing that. If you're coming up from nothing, you got to either be doing some other type of movement to get money to put into your music, or you generally got to be on this business shit with the music and make your music make money for you. So it's this idea that people are just out there doing the music on this raw dog shit because they just want to do that music, usually don't all the way, it can't sing all the way true, you know what I'm saying? Because you have to do shit to get money. So at some point, you're gonna either have to work with an artist that might not you've chose to work with or something like this, or a company's offering you money to do a kind of music that specifically like this, and you then have to be like, am I gonna do this because it's not exactly the music that I would do, or am I just gonna say no? And in the past, especially when I was signed, I said no to a bunch of stuff, bro. You know, that for me at that point, I'm like, this is what I would call selling out. You know, I'm a real hip hop, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing this remix, or I'm not appearing on this show in doing performance like that. And I did a few of them, and it might have been for my own detriment to not have that exposure or to be out there. You know, and I think that's one thing that's changed a lot within what you would call hip hop nowadays, is that I don't think those barriers are there, and people just do whatever, whenever, you know, if it's gonna pop, or if it's gonna make the dough. So, but you know, for me, it's always been about musical integrity and just doing the music that I want to make. I think at one point in time, I was very concerned with being a sellout rap artists and all that shit, and I thought that was really whack, and it wasn't something that I wanted to invest in, and I would call out, you know. So it wasn't something. But now I think the game has changed so much that you have to kind of look at the reality of where it is, where you just look at the paths and careers of your favorite artists and tell me they haven't done stuff that isn't just straight up pop music, you know? It's kind of hard to say that nowadays, you know what I'm saying?
You can keep guidelines.
That's what I'm saying, bro. It's like you can bring out some of the hardest artists, producers, whatever, and really look back at the stuff they've did and be like, there's at some point they've worked with a pop star, pop artist, done something that you're like, this isn't really the underground hip hop like that, like, you know, and that's reality. And because when money is on the table and there's certain checks, most people are going to do that shit. You know what I'm saying? And that's the reality. So I think at one point, I think hip hop did have more, balls, or I don't know, like what you would say, like could stand more firmly there, because it would just get called out in the, you know, in the later 80s, in the mid 90s. You couldn't come out doing pop rap and not get called out. And I think even when the whole Puffy shit started happening, that was when you really started seeing like what what people still trying to hold on to the hardcore shit of what hip hop was. Like, you don't do this shit, you don't make pop rap and still think you're the shit.
Yeah.
Right? But that was the split. It was like nah, because you couldn't, who can front on Biggie in that? But at the same time, it was like, okay, you guys are making pop rap. You might be making some good pop rap, but that's what it is. And there's that, and I think, you know, from that era, it's just become more and more just accepted that if you make pop rap, you're just as credible and viable as the underground or the real rap. And I think that term real rap has just died, or it was never solidified. It was something, I think, at one point in hip hop we just all took as, you know, these are the real dudes doing the real shit. You respected them, you know, they got the props, you know what I mean? And that was it. I think when certain artists would have bigger records, a lot of the times it wasn't celebrated as much as within hip hop. It was kind of, okay, you had a pop record. I think it wasn't until then sort of mid-90s era when it started to change. Like if you look at LL Cool J, I think, you know, a guy like that has always had pop records, but at the same time he would come back and do hardcore records to win the heads back. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
It's just like you're fine.
Nice, dope.
All original. You see what I'm saying? That's the level that I'm at now. where it, I started off just sampling records to the point that I don't need to sample no records. Every sound I play myself, you know what I'm saying? And it's a different level because I was from the place that I always thought playing the synthesizer keyboard beats was kind of corny, kind of whack. You know what I'm saying? I always thought you gotta only sample from vinyl. So when I go to play and sample my own music, I gotta make it so the shit is kind of indistinguishable from sampling a dope record, a dope break. But at the same time, give me all the versatility of what you can't get from sampling a record where you literally have the control of all of the instruments, where you can then mix them all separately, but at the same time have real continuity in terms of programming, chord changes, progression, dropouts, breakdowns, and such and such, and it gives you a much broader soundscape. Whereas if you're just having a 2-track loop, which even now with AI you can do the splits, which I do love. So when I do go back to sampling records, I love doing those stem splits nowadays because you can get much more into sampling a 2-track with obviously that separation. But when you're playing it live, it's for me, that's the level that I didn't think that I would really even think about getting to. But now I'm like, yo, yeah, I'm there. I just have to concentrate, get the instruments out, and you get into the instruments in the same way as programming, chopping up and programming a beat. You can get into playing the actual instruments. You know what I'm saying? And just put your own creativity out there, and the music that I want to hear and make, I just make, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of the times I'll just listen to records. I'll listen to the kind of records that I like to sample, and then I'll be like, yo, okay, what instruments have they got in that recording there?
Yeah.
And I'll break down the instruments, and I'll either get exactly those instruments, and I can do exactly that type of recording, and that's how my mind thinks now. So instead of just sort of relying on buying breaks and records to get my sounds, it's all about get the instruments, play the instruments, record the instruments, work with actual recording and how using the mics and recording to different formats, to the tapes, to the reels, to 4-track, to cassette. You get a lot of you can make really your own flavor, and also kind of you hear kind of how records were created, and certain things make more sense. There's like especially for me with drum recording, it's really been very apparent, where you start recording your own drums, and a lot of shit when you're kind of chopping up breaks, you start realizing why certain sounds sound like such, or why you would have difficulty chopping up one type of record to the other, and why certain, and for me it was always more of a mystery before I started actually recording and mixing those like actual live recorded drums. And you know what I'm saying? And then really thinking about, okay, when I'm playing a drum kit, to then trying to play a drum kit on the drum machine, and what's the differences, what's different from playing a drum break chopped up on a drum machine to playing an actual drum kit, and then how can I replicate playing a drum kit on a drum machine, and what is kind of some of the main differences from just having static recorded sounds than playing a drum kit. So, and understanding certain things of how snares and hi-hats land together.
How to make a perfect swing or something like that, yeah?
Yeah, but also why I think a lot of times in sampling drum breaks, we take, here's a tip for the producers and such, take that snares just have especially when you're sampling from breaks, or you have, your samples are coming from already played drum beats. Your snares and kicks have hi-hats on them. So most snares, I would say, that are sort of very classic in hip hop, a lot of the character comes from the back hi-hat being played under the snare, which is usually slightly open, or it's extra push on the hi-hat. If you just record a blank snare, like without a hi-hat being played, so it's not being played in the beat, you're just recording the solo snare, the snare will have a lot different character. It will have more of a straightforward snare character. It sounds like a snare drum. So if you just play a normal hi-hat behind that kind of snare drum, usually that snare drum won't sound that amazing. It'll kind of sound kind of weak. But if you have a kind of very tight closed hi-hat, then a slightly open hi-hat with a nice bit of character, bit of extra push, which is going to usually happen when you're playing on a drum kit together, you go into the hi-hat a little bit. It's kind of, you can't, most drummers I don't think notice it or can help it unless you're really trying to play very lightly on the hi-hat. You're going to go into that hi-hat a bit stronger when you're hitting the snare, especially on like a 4/4 kind of beat, like a rock beat, all right? So that hi-hat becomes a little bit more open. This is one thing that, for me, from not playing the drums, is one thing that I really started concentrating a lot on now in programming beats. So the snare and slight open, but not fully open, more like a closed open or a hard hit on the hi-hat goes along with your snare drum, and only with your snare drum. But then you have the more of a ticky or your regular type of hi-hats that are played after snare drum or in between and other places, but especially on the snare, you can use it as a push and pull, right?
Yeah.
That is what I've got as a big, right? That goes along with, I mean, I can hardly hear it because got a double hit on this snare pad. Those two go together. So when I play, because if you just hear that snare, it doesn't really have that snap character to it.
Yeah.
That big hi-hat is just landing on it, right?
Yeah.
But when you just hear them together, it just sounds like that open hi-hat is part of the snare.
Yeah.
And if you were to sample that as a beat, like if it would sound like that. But if you have the separates, the snare is just more just the snare sound. It's not as interesting. And these are things which, from sampling, these are my own drums instead of sampling from a break. These drums are available on the SP Master kits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a slight, things like that have made me program slightly different, where you're trying to actually program much more as if you are playing a live kit, and therefore you can introduce more variation and have slight more control over the whole feel of the kit, and kind of recreate what you would do a lot more on a live kit with a drum machine. Well, they're corny. It's pretty much just that simple. If you're making beats that are just basically trying to replicate someone else's style, it's basically saying you ain't got no style. You're just a replica. You're just a cornball copy. You know what I'm saying? So, it just basically means you're not original enough in yourself to come up with ideas. And I think this has been nothing new. There's always been people that have never been original enough to come up with their own shit and just tether off the back of what someone else is doing. And I think everyone does that to a degree, especially when they start, basically. You know, it's someone else has probably been more influenced, whether it's someone that is everyone else knows or it's someone in their circle that helps. It's like usually when you're coming up, you're going to be influenced by something bigger. But I think there's got to be a point where you kind of develop your own shit and you're free enough to sort of explore your own style. I think I think the internet in general is not a good place for music. I think it's too overwhelming for people. I think it's far too much, where it's sort of like you can just go from one to too many things, therefore nothing catches people's attention long enough and everyone just is on to the next, which is why I think tracks and people are just doing one verse and two verses on the majority of tracks, because people haven't got the attention span anymore to hear a full song. So songs aren't songs that are meant to be, this is someone's full song, it's got two verses or one verse.
Get full emotional arc of the song when you got like 2 minutes and...
Yeah, you know, some songs, okay, two verses is good. And I think for me, I remember the point because I was all, in the 90s, it was always about 3 verses. Your tracks usually ended up just before 4 minutes, right? With the outro and stuff, right? Sometimes 4 minutes. And most 90s tracks were actually like that, like 3 verses would be over 3.5 minutes, you know? And it was, I think, in the later 90s, early 2000s, where tracks started to be, it was like cooler to do like 2 verses, you know? And I remember that, and it all happening now, I started to do more tracks that were actually like 2 verses. It was more, just seemed like all right, this is the thing now, you just do 2 verses and done. And I think that formula has got even smaller, so the verses and that, but he was like still doing like 18 bar 20 verses then. Now I know people don't even like doing those like long verses, so it's always 16, sometimes it's less than 16, like 12 bars and stuff like that. So onto the next song. And I don't think it doesn't make me invested in songs. One of the main things I also noticed today with rappers is the low energy. I'm not into the low energy rap. I think it works.
Foot of selling drugs. It's all about.
I'm not even that's low vibrational, but I'm talking about low energy delivery, right? Where if you go back, and I think it's sort of like every rapper seems to want to just be Mr. It's like super relaxed now, like very monotone, very sort of like if you're rather like more like if you're having a conversation with someone, than rather performing, spitting, and really getting that right. And sometimes that shit can get a bit too hectic, like but it seemed like in the 90s and 2000s that was more the sort, and that energy for me it has more of an impact. And I think nowadays, like, people are just too laid back on every bloody track, right? And it almost goes with the tracks that are being produced, because the majority of tracks don't have drums anymore. So it's sort of like this, we don't need drums. And even when we get drums, they'll be very sort of, in my terms, weak drums. You won't have no proper hi-hats. You'll have some 808 like subbed out kick with maybe a clappy sounding snare, not a real snare, So a lot of those kind of beats don't really do what I want hip hop to do, where it sort of pushes you and gives you that smack, right?
That's
and it's sort of like, the last beats I think I started from sort of mainstream people was in the early 2000s that kind of had that kind of hit, and then after that you got to go to the underground to find something close to those to like hit you in the chest kind of beats, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think there is. And I think maybe now it's starting to be a little bit more accepted, you know. I think it has to become more accepted because we obviously have, you know, older statesmen of the genre, you know, who are in their 60s now and such, that are still touring and doing massive things and, you know, in big interviews and big books and everything like that. So I think it's become more accepted. But I think there's still a divide between what it is though, and I think that divide is obvious because I think as older people, as older hip-hop people, we can't ourselves get out of the mentality that it's a young people's game. And I think that's a problem for the older artists when they come out, is if they haven't actually elevated themselves to be able to talk about subjects that are more relevant to someone who is of this age and not still coming out trying to sound like you're just a reincarnation of yourself when you were 18 years old, you know what I'm saying? Like, having the same subject matter and same level of thought, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's a problem for artists, and they got to be able to work that out with themselves. It's like how you come out as a old man, like 50, 60-year-old man, and what are you going to rap about? Are you still going to just rap about the same stuff you were rapping about when you was a teenager? You know, or are you going to have development? And how does that development, you know, come across? And also, I think there's a disconnect between the young audience and the older, because there is an older audience. So the older audience, I think, will be the ones that will support more of the old school artists, and it will be a handful of young people that might check for some old school artists. But I don't think that's one of the problems, is that there is a disconnect, and there has been, I think, with the younger generation and older hip hop for a long time. I think in this country, it's not even really there. It's like you might find every now and then a young person who might check some old school hip hop in their own way, but the connection between any kind of old school UK hip hop and the younger UK rap is kind of non-existent. It don't really exist, you know, not from what I've seen and heard, you know what I mean? There'll be people who might do this, but there's not a cultural bridge. It's kind of like two different genres and two different worlds apart from each other.
Those younger artists don't identify themselves
as part of hip hop in that, even though it's kind of changing, but I don't think they identify with any of what was happening within UK hip hop, you know what I'm saying? So there's and I think it's the same within the States, obviously to a smaller degree, because there's more of a natural lineage there, and I think success reigns supreme. So if you're a young person, you're going to know who Jay-Z is, and you're going to probably have, you know, go back and listen and be like, okay, I like this record and I like that. I know who 50 Cent is. Go back and I like this record, I like that record. But unless you're a sort of mainstream, in-your-face artist, it's not going to make young people really going to want to go back and do that research, you know. So it's all about celebrity, man. That's a deep question, but I would say, you know, don't feel that you have to get trapped into doing hip-hop in any one or specific way, because I think that is one of the things about hip-hop, is that you can do it in a multitude of ways, and it's all about the end expression. And I think the most important thing is to make sure that the expression is as pure as possible to your understanding of self and what it is to come out and either make beats or even rap on the mic or the other forms of hip hop, is to basically bring yourself out and be as true as yourself in the dopest way that you know how to be. That's probably the most important thing to be, I think, within hip hop, is to bring yourself out and bring the dopest part of yourself to the table, right? But there's multitude of techniques and understanding that goes into what makes something dope, right? But don't get caught up in any 1-2 ways of method, because at the end of the day, it is. If you look at the people who have had success within hip hop, it's them bringing out their character and shining through that character. And sometimes it will be the most basic techniques that can be as fascinating and as dope as some of the people doing the most technical stuff. So that's probably my end advice, because there is so many techniques and understanding of the craft. You know, for a beat maker, you could spend all of your time collecting the rarest and all the dopest breaks that you could possibly get within hip hop, but it does not mean you're going to end up being the dopest producer. Sometimes the guy that has a couple of crates like that, you know, and his little beat machine will make a doper joint than you because of his vision. You know, so it's all about understanding yourself and bringing yourself out. And do your research, you know what I'm saying? Listen to records, listen to the classic producers, listen to the old school records, listen to for the producers, listen to programming, you know what I'm saying? Listen to how programming goes together, listen to selections of records, why records go together. Think when you're putting records together, think about, does this sound work with that sound? For MCs, listen to the dopest MCs, listen to all types of MCs, think about flow, compounds, structures, you know what I'm saying? How to count bars, how to come to the end of your measure, how to make bars feel natural, you know what I'm saying, and make sense, you know what I'm saying? That's it.